The 1990s was the greatest decade that this country has ever seen. And I'm not just saying that because I grew up in the 90s. I know everybody always says that the decade that they grew up in was the best decade ever, but the 90s truly was a great time. Back then, you could say whatever you wanted. Artists like Eminem, gangster rappers, NWA, Snoop, Tupac, all them, they would never make it today. Their record labels wouldn't distribute their content because it would be deemed too offensive. We might offend somebody, it might hurt someone's feelings. The economy throughout the 90s was booming, thanks in large part to the tech boom and the dot com bubble. It seemed like back then, the country's biggest problem was whether or not Bill Clinton got some head in the Oval Office or whatever room that he was in. When that is your biggest problem, when that's the biggest focus, you know things in the country are going well. The NBA blew up in the 90s. The NFL took off in the 90s. The 90s was the golden era of Major League Baseball. Pro wrestling boomed into the mainstream 1990s. It was a great decade for everybody. Prosperity was everywhere. There was something else that made the 90s great. Men were men. I'm talking about real men, not these sissy men that we see on television today. And back in the 90s, women were women. If God created you as a man, that's what you were, and vice versa. If God created you as a woman, that's what you identified as. I really shouldn't even say that. That's what the hell you were. There was no identifying. There was no using the proper pronouns. If you were a dude, you were a he, a him. And if you were a woman, her, she. It was very simple. There wasn't any of this non binary, I'm questioning what I am. There wasn't any of that garbage. One of the biggest stars of the 90s was Brett Favre. I was never a big fan of Brett Favre during his playing days. I respected his toughness, but I just never liked him. But my opinion has changed on Brett Favre lately because he has proven over and over that he has common sense. In other words, Brett Favre isn't woke. He has a podcast, which, I mean, who doesn't have a podcast nowadays? But on his podcast, he got to talking about the Olympics. The Olympics have decided that they are going to allow transgender athletes to compete. And they'll be allowed to compete against the gender they identify with. Basically, if you were born a dude and you've decided that you want to be a woman, you can compete against other women. And I should say, you can compete against other real women, women that are actually women and didn't need a surgery to become a woman. Now, as expected, the wokers are crucifying Brett Favre. How dare you have a different opinion? You're a misogynist. You are anti-LGBTQYZ or whatever it is. This is all typical woke behavior. This is what they do. See, one part of the woke agenda is to create confusion, muddy the waters, if you will. Accept behavior that used to be unacceptable. As Michelle Obama famously said back in 2008, we have to change our traditions. We have to change our history. We have to move into a different place. The different place that she was talking about is the America they're trying to make us live in right now. One of the athletes that Brett Favre was talking about was Laurel Hubbard. She will become the first openly transgender athlete to compete in the Olympics. She's a weightlifter. But here is what's a little bit strange about Laurel Hubbard. This won't be the first time that she competes in the Olympics. See, she actually competed back in 2013 when she was a he. She was a dude. But wait, it gets even better. The Olympic Committee updated their rules back in 2015, and this policy now allows people that were born male to compete in women's events without having what they like to call an sex reassignment surgery. In other words, The Olympics aren't only allowing transgender athletes to compete in whichever gender they identify with, but you can still be physically male and compete as a woman. Now, I don't know when the Olympics start. I know the trials are going on right now, but I guarantee you the woke media will treat Laurel Hubbard like she is some kind of a hero. Just like they did with Caitlyn Jenner a few years ago when she was given the Courage Award at the ESPYs for transitioning. Brett Favre also mentioned Chelsea Wolfe, who was selected as an alternate for the USA's BMX squad. Now, the selection of Chelsea Wolfe isn't only controversial because she's transgender. It's also controversial because of her actions. She went on Facebook last year and she said that she wanted to burn the American flag on the podium at the Olympics. This is the type of person that we deem worthy of representing America on a global stage. Someone who wants to burn the flag on the podium? What the hell is wrong with these people? And by that, I mean the people in the Olympics that selected her to represent America. If she doesn't like America, then why in the hell is she representing the country? If you don't like it here in America, why don't you go live and compete in the Olympics representing another country? I got a good idea. Why don't you go live in Iran or Saudi Arabia? See if they'll allow you to represent them in the Olympics. Middle Eastern countries, they are notorious for their affection towards gay and transgender people. Why don't you try and go over there? I'll tell you why. Because they wouldn't let her step foot off the plane. And if they did, she probably wouldn't be alive for very long. It is baffling to me that we even have to have a discussion like this. This is the easiest thing to understand. Children understand this. Men are men, women are women. Seems pretty simple. There is a reason for centuries men and women have competed separately. Do I even need to explain this? I mean, you guys are smart. You know the reason. But let's flip the script for a second. Let's play another round of Stump the Woker. Let's imagine for a second that LeBron James is not woke. He's getting older. He's going to be 37 in December. NBA players usually begin to decline before this point, but we all know LeBron's prime is ending. Instead of him continuing to compete in the NBA, where he knows his diminishing skill set means it's not likely he's going to win another championship, he decides that he wants to go play in the WNBA instead. Because even at 37 years old, LeBron knows he will be the best player in the WNBA. What do you think the woke media's response would be? They would be screaming about how unfair it is. LeBron James shouldn't be allowed to compete with women. He's bigger and stronger. It's not right. It's acceptable, though, for transgender men to compete in women's sports. That's all good. Have you ever thought about why? Why do wokers think transgender men competing with women is acceptable? For decades, they have been trying to emasculate men. They have been trying to confuse gender roles. Women can do anything men can do. It's just not true. They have been trying to turn men into women since the 1960s. So, transgender men competing in women's sports, it fits the woke agenda. Now, I'm not going to lie. I was concerned about the country last year. People with common sense like us were silenced. And no one was standing up or no one was speaking out as the country was literally burning to the ground. But I'm encouraged from what I've been seeing lately. Parents standing up all over the country against local school boards who are trying to implement critical race theory into their curriculum for elementary school kids. We're seeing more and more people speak out on social media, even in the mainstream media. People with common sense, normal morals and values, I believe they've had enough. People are fed up, and they're not afraid to speak out anymore. There is a reason all of this is happening, especially the push to teach critical race theory in schools. These wokers love China. They think America should be more like China. Mao gave the blueprint on how to change a nation, or as Michelle Obama likes to say, move into a different place. Mao didn't use race like they're trying to do here in America. He used class instead. It started in the school system. He brainwashed young children into thinking that rich people were evil. Does that sound familiar in this country? The older generation was evil in China. That's what Mao taught. Now, it took a generation, but he was able to take over China with the help of his followers, who had been brainwashed their entire lives. That's what these wokers are trying to do here in America. And they're attacking from all angles. In the media, they've infected our sports leagues. Brett Favre actually spoke out on Father's Day about the importance of keeping politics out of sports, and he's absolutely right. But I'm getting a bit off topic here. Let's go ahead and close this out. What do you guys think of the Olympics allowing transgender men to compete against women? Now, I don't watch the Olympics. I think it's boring. But if you like the Olympics, will this wokeness be enough to get you to not watch? Sound off in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com. KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.